you've been on an amazing journey, but you also go by Kent Carnivore, but your real name is Lee. Lee Copus, and your story, resilience, transformation. And I'm really excited to share the struggles that you've gone through in the diagnosis of ulcerative colitis, and now the fact that you're sharing with so many people. Maybe you could simply jump in, Lee, and tell those listening a little bit about yourself and how you got to this crazy carnivore space.
Yeah, it's a funny story because in many ways, I think a lot of people associate my health story with ulcerative colitis, and maybe some people think that I resolved that and I was okay and that kind of thing. But obviously I went carnivore as a consequence of that surgery causing depression later. And so I found this way of life, this diet, many, many years after I was in serious trouble and at the time. And so if we go back to 2012, that's when I got my diagnosis of ulcerative colitis. So it's an inflammatory bowel disease, as many people may know. It's also classed as an autoimmune disease. I had no idea about this stuff. I had no idea what I had. And I thought I knew about diet and nutrition to a point, like, macros and balance and these so-called healthy superfoods that are all plants.
Right.
Boy, was I wrong. And I didn't realize that my doctor was so off the mark with things as well, because when I got my diagnosis, that's who I went through, my doctor, the hospital. We had obviously a bit of an exploratory, which is quite invasive. They go up the back end with a camera and they take biopsies and that kind of thing. And it was that they came back with those results. So when I went back down to my GP again, he's just discussing obviously what this is. He's relaying to me, yep, it's an IBD, and it's hereditary. He was talking along the lines of genes, and obviously I'm this very unlucky individual. And they have drugs, but I wasn't in need of those drugs quite yet. So this is the thing that I know now is like the advice that I was given, if it was real meaningful advice, I do truly believe I would still have my colon. And so I'm standing here today with an ostomy bag. It's a permanent situation for me. And I had no idea that this was kind of my fate, given the advice that I was given. And so, but they talked about fiber pretty quickly. They talked about whole grains, just whole plant foods, because then it's going to come with all of that fiber and all this kind of stuff. And that's quite a cliche, I think, in medical circles as well, when they're talking along the lines of nutrition, even from nutritionists and dietitians. When you have a gut related issue, fiber seems to be the thing that they think of. That's usually the topic of discussion from that point onwards. And so I fully believed that fiber was necessary and plants were super healthy. And being quite sort of worried about my health, I'd never been in this kind of situation before. I went home and I was pretty conscientious about eating what I thought were healthy, whole foods, mostly from the plant world. I did also believe in the importance of animal protein, but there was no way I was eating enough fats. I was never in nutritional ketosis as a young adult. No way. I was eating far too frequently. And this was also some of the advice that I got. So in 2012, eat lots of fiber and eat little and often. So it's quite interesting, because obviously if you think you've got a gut problem, not only am I not getting any rest because I'm eating so frequently, but what I'm eating isn't broken down in the stomach. And I didn't know about this stuff. And so you've got all this plant material, the fiber, the proteins that we can't digest, tumbling through my colon eventually, where I had all the problems. And so in the beginning, it was very low end. But obviously, as I continued to eat this way and live this way, things exacerbated and just got progressively worse. And again, I was very confused as to why, because I'm thinking, well, I'm doing all the right things, Anyway, 2 years passed. So now we're in 2014. I go back to the doctor and present with just worse symptoms. And so typically I would go in and out of what we call flare-ups. And when you're in remission, you feel like a normal guy. You feel like you can just live a normal life, and you look normal and you look healthy. You can go to work and everything's a-okay. But during a flare-up, I would just describe this as feeling a bit run down. You end up having bloody diarrhea, which, nasty symptoms like that, some mucus things. And obviously the frequency in which you're going to the toilet increases. Your confidence drops. You don't want to go too far from the house. And I don't know if anybody knows, but I'm a window cleaner. And so basically I'm often out in the sticks, and there's not like toilets everywhere. I'm in a rural area. You've seen it. It's like a lot of countryside. And so there's not toilets all over the place. And so it was quite tricky, when things progressively got worse in the initial stages. I would lose a lot of weight. I was obviously losing blood and iron and electrolytes all the time. And again, so from 2014, now I'm taking these drugs that they gave me, these steroids, and that kind of worked at first, at least for me. I felt like, oh, I'm being seen to. This is good. I'm getting treatment. I'm on the mend, perhaps, which is just crazy. Frequency would lower a bit. The symptoms would lower a bit. It was quite miraculous on the first couple of flare-ups. But I would say 6 months later, it didn't feel like I was even taking the medication anymore, because there I am back to where I was, and I'm like, oh, things are getting worse again. I'm eating all of the colorful foods, lots of whole plant foods, lots of variety, little and often, and now I'm taking the drugs, and I'm kind of like, why is everything getting worse and worse and worse? So anyway, I do make a few trips. We have a few discussions, but it's just more drugs and more of the same advice. It's in your genes. That's all they ever said. They never checked for gluten. And so, being in the position I'm in now, I'm amazed they never checked for gluten intolerance. And I believe that everybody's intolerant to gluten. It's just on a spectrum. They never really questioned, these plant foods and the proteins, certain things, compounds that could cause permeability. I'm convinced they had no idea that leaky gut and these sort of compounds that poke holes in your intestine was even crossing their mind. I don't think that they understood that, obviously, because they are trained strictly in medicine, and many of them had good intentions. They thought that they were helping me. I tried, and when it got to 2017, I'd already been through episodes where I'd gone maybe 15, 20 times a day, but this was now 30 times a day, and I'd never known anything like it. I had seen some YouTube videos of guys in this situation like a year or two before this, thinking like, oh, I'm so glad that I'm not in their position. And then now I'm like pretty much living in the toilet. I felt like I should have just taken a mattress and a pillow up in the bathroom, and just, because by the time I'd finished, you wash your hands, you go back downstairs. I laid down because it's so exhausting and relentless. I'm laying down and you barely get settled, and you're getting signals to go straight back up. And so I'm going up the stairs, because we only had a toilet upstairs in my parents' house at the time. And it was just exhausting. And I couldn't believe it. Felt like I had some kind of poisoning, and my body was trying to flush this thing out, and I was waiting for it to kind of clear or something. That's just how it felt. And then I realized, I'm in real trouble here. Like, my parents were in the States, so they didn't really know what I was going through exactly. And I wasn't driving at the time, and everything was just like, just the way things were. It couldn't have been a worse situation. So I got on the phone to my nan and explained, I don't think I've got another day in me. And I really meant that. I don't think I can do another day. And so she was like, right, we'll take you first thing in the morning. I remember that car journey on the way to the hospital. I was sweating, holding like the little, the handles at the top of the door, trying to hold it in. It was just so constant. Eventually got to the hospital, and obviously I was a mess. They saw me quite quickly. Not like the state of the NHS today. It's a nightmare. But I was seen in sort of less than 2 hours. Again, it's really uncomfortable, But they basically just hooked me up with intravenous drip to rehydrate me. They introduced some more steroids into the system, which I understand was probably quite sensible in that moment. Lower inflammation. Let's do an exploratory. Let's see what's going on. Camera again up the back end. Let's have a look. And they were very, very shocked, considering like 3 and a bit years ago, they had seen things and it was low end and mild. And now they couldn't see a part of my colon that wasn't riddled with this disease.
Wow.
And I was there. I didn't take the anesthetic. So I was reading the room. I was looking at their faces. And it was pretty crazy, the experience, very uncomfortable. But I've got these women holding my hands like I was giving birth. And the doctor they were getting quite serious. More and more people were coming in, and they were talking between them. And so, crazy. It all seemed to happen all at once. And it was a bit, it's almost like a blur now when I think back. But they trialed me on this last resort experimental immune suppressant drug. And so they said there's about 50-50. You might get out of trouble here and you won't need a surgery. But they said most likely, looking at things, you probably will, at least at some point. They trialed me on this for a number of days. All I remember is that it was for a couple of days longer than they said that I should be on this drug, because it was very, very potent. Obviously, you're lowering your body's defenses, and so it's not a great thing. They're terrible. These drugs are very, very harsh and egregious on the body. But anyway, I was there, and they came in one day and said, sorry, Lee, but this isn't working. I'm going to have to take your colon out the next morning, kind of thing. And so the gown and the socks and these stoma nurses were coming around. And so if anybody doesn't know what a stoma is, it's the last part of your intestine, depending on what surgery they do, that can obviously vary, that
Right.
protrude through the abdominal wall after they take a section of your digestive tract out. And so as it happens, that next morning I had ileostomy surgery. And so the last part of my digestive tract, which protrudes through my abdominal wall, is the terminal part of the ileum, which is now, it sits maybe an inch to an inch and a half sometimes from the abdominal wall. And then what happens is this is why stoma nurses were coming around, just introducing me to this whole idea of this life I'm going to have, to put a bag, and they showed me these bags that you cut a hole in the back. I should probably go and get one really, but you cut the hole in the back and you peel the sticky off and you put it over the stoma, and that's how you now empty naturally. That it kind of works on gravity. I don't really have any control over it at all, unless I'm laying down flat or I'm obviously asleep. Things slow down, but this is how I go number 2 now, and I've obviously started unwillingly doing these crazy experiments now with food and seeing things I'd never seen before, which is kind of interesting.
Do you have a bag close by at hand that you can maybe walk off and go get one?
In the bathroom, it will take me like 15 seconds.
Please.
I've tried quite a few of these things, and they did talk about, the varieties, and some people prefer certain products, and this is the one that I like the most. So it's quite inoffensive. That's what it looks like as you wear it, kind of like that. This is what it looks like at the back, and so I've cut that hole, and that's roughly the size of my stoma. And so when I'm ready, I just peel this bit here. You then put that over, and so it would go like this, and then that's basically permanently sitting on my stomach to my right. And I personally don't like to leave this just fill up like some people do. I'm quite, not obsessive in a crazy way, but it'll fill slowly but surely, depending on how many times I eat, what I eat, and things like this. And I'll typically empty the content, because you can basically undo this bottom bit here. I'll try and do this like that. And then obviously you can allow it to empty out of there. So rather than going and sitting on the toilet, I like to stand. So it's kind of like I'm doing everything standing up. I haven't sat down now for a long time to go to the toilet, basically.
I mean, obviously the number of people that are suffering from bowel disorders and yours, Crohn's, colitis, colitis, which I think Crohn's is from the lips to the bum, and
gum to bum,
colitis is just the colon section. But I always think they're all overlapping in some ways, but the number of people suffering from this, and it just seems to be like a normal part of your life today. And I'm imagining that the docs kind of think of, well, when we get to this point, we can cut it out and you'll be fine. Were you fine after you had this surgery?
So actually, they did mention this before, that this technically is the only cure. That's what they said. And so I'm thinking like, okay, I don't want that. I don't want the cure. I want to try and get better if I can. And obviously that wasn't the case. Now I had the surgery, and I think maybe about 3 or 4 days later, they came around, the team that saw to me, and they said, how do you feel now? Because many people say like they feel like they're well now.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I don't feel like I'm poisoned anymore. I'm obviously very tender. It's a strange situation, looking down and seeing this new contraption. It's I just think of it like a body part that's now on the outside rather than the inside. But for me, what happened is when I got home, that's when depression hit me almost instantly. I was looking forward to going home for a number of reasons. Obviously, no one likes to live in the hospital. Some people might, but most people don't. And I was looking forward to getting home, seeing my family, getting better sleep, actually, because I don't sleep in a hospital. I don't think many people can. It's like a superpower if you can sleep in a hospital. But I was looking forward to getting back to all the food that I couldn't eat in the hospital. So I was looking forward to some of what I thought were healthy meals, some of what I felt were kind of okay, a little bit of a treat, but that's not terrible. And now I don't have my disease anymore. I'm going to get away with it as well, right? I can eat whatever I want. And can you believe there's a couple of things, I suppose. During the initial stages, they tell you you're not going to have fiber. It's like, don't have fiber because we want to see if this thing works, and build up to it, build up to the fibrous material, build up to the mushrooms. They talked about what promoted the most gas, and everything was plants, mushrooms right at the top, onions, all of these things to cover up, which is quite strange, but things to cover up smells, right? But what I've realized is when you don't eat a lot of the plants, it doesn't smell that bad. so that you don't need to eat all this citrus stuff and things that counter the plant. So, but they also said, really what you want to focus on is starch that is like refined. So white pasta, white bread, white rice, because this stuff hasn't got the fiber, and so it becomes kind of like liquid. It's obviously metabolized as sugar, but it's quite watery in many ways. Potato starch is probably like the next level up. And then you're talking about maybe tomatoes cooked, apples cooked. They said to do this kind of thing, skins and seeds off. But over time, just reintroduce. You can have some spicy curries eventually, but just work your way up to it. And so I'd gone back to eating everything that I enjoyed eating slowly but surely. And for the first time now, I'm seeing the way that food is visually as it would enter where I had this disease, as it would enter the colon.
Hold on.
And I think a lot of people kind of misunderstand what I'm saying when I say this, because people think, oh, you're not chewing your food properly. I'm going to try and explain it quite clearly without kind of, I don't know, being like confusing people. But you think you're chewing a lot of these plant materials more than you actually are. And so if you bite into a sandwich that's made of like seeded bread, there's seeds all infused in the bread. You've got tomatoes in there that sliced, and you've got bits of the skin, bits of the seeds. There's tuna, there's cheese in there, there's chicken in there as well for the protein. I'm chewing this all in the same way. It's all in my mouth at the same time. And what I was seeing was whole seeds and half seeds in the bag. I was seeing the tomato skins and red chunks of tomato, bright red. If I had a Sunday roast, which is quite a tradition around here in the UK, I would often eat like broccoli, potatoes, parsnips, carrots, peas, and then you have your chicken and you pour gravy over it and stuff like that. I never ever found any evidence of meat, zero. You couldn't tell me what animal products I had eaten because it was broken down 100%. But you could see all the broccoli florets, parts of the stalk. And then I started to like almost experiment. So I would just take a blueberry and just cut it in half and swallow it. And that half a blueberry, sure enough, is there in the bag. Hasn't changed, which kind of baffled me. I didn't really understand, obviously, how the body worked at that point. If I ate a bit of chicken or a bit of steak, even bigger than that, 3 times the size, and swallowed that, there's no evidence of that. So our stomach acid breaks that down to a liquid in less than 2 hours, effortlessly, but it cannot do anything about fiber. Obviously, it just ends up down the toilet. Lots of sugar we can't digest. It never enters the bloodstream like nutrients, for example. I call them plant bones. They're just plant bones. They prop plants upright. And so these are very robust structures, and the skins and the seeds are very robust structures, and they're protective. They want to protect the plant from being broken and snapped. And when they are broken and snapped, these seeds, these skins, they start to kind of release defense chemicals, And so all these poisons and toxins, obviously you're not going to see that in the bag, but I am seeing a lot of evidence of these undigested plant materials that I thought I was chewing pretty thoroughly. And I've swallowed chunks of meat, and I've never seen any meat in the bag. So it fascinated me. It was kind of this strange journey of discovery that was going on unwillingly, not wanting to be in this situation, just like, this is so weird, every day.
So did you bring this up with your docs who are still treating you, I imagine, because just because you had your colon removed, I'm sure they're still concerned about other bowel inflammation that might be a problem.
So I hadn't really been, because I was, what do you call it when you're discharged? I was discharged, and so I wasn't really I was healthy, right? I was cured, and so I wasn't really seeing the doctor for a long time. I saw them maybe 6 months later, and it just didn't really even come up. It was quite a clinical thing. I didn't even see the main surgeon. I was supposed to, but they were busy. And so you just see a nurse, and then you kind of like, oh, right, that was it. And you go home, and then another year and a half passes. And then you see the doctor about having this second surgery. I'll get back to that in a little bit, because obviously they left a little bit of tissue at the back, that rectum and anus essentially, that needed to go, because we kind of agreed that this was the best situation for me. It was too small to reattach, too problematic to reattach, too risky. And so I accepted this was a permanent situation. At some point, obviously, I just got to go and get that removed. But I didn't really see doctors that much. I would just show them Lucy, look at this. This is crazy. Look at this food. And it's like, no way. That just comes out like that, and never any plants, never any animal products. But I didn't really get the opportunity to speak to doctors until around about 9 months ago, when I had my second surgery. So that's when I start to see people. And in the build up, obviously I'm having all these pre-operation assessments. first of all, they asked me, do I have any allergies? And I said, all plants. So they were like, what do you mean all plants? And I'm like, I can't eat plants. If I eat carbohydrate above a certain level, if I eat any fiber, if I eat any of this stuff, I get depressed, I get acne, I don't sleep right. My brain doesn't work properly. I can't concentrate. I can't retain information. I can't speak fluently at all. It's just like back to old basic me, And they kind of thought this was really strange. Right before I had my surgery, the surgeon was on the phone before I was in the hospital, and he was talking about this. And he said, so you said you're allergic to plants. So does that mean you're not going to take the Ensure shake? I'm pretty sure you have Ensure shakes where you are, right? And I was like, no, I don't want to take an Ensure shake. And he's like, but you need your energy, Lee. And I was like, but I'm full of energy. I'm fat adapted. I eat fats, I eat proteins. I'm ready to fast any day. If someone said you can't eat for a week, I'm not going to sweat too much. I can fast for a week, no problem. And so they don't understand this very well. And I said, you want me to fast for the surgery, but right before, when you're doing the surgery on me, you want me to process seed oils and sugar and all these other chemicals and things in that ingredient list while you're performing surgery. And they were like, you need your energy. And it was amazing to me that this guy, and he comes across really nice. He's got a very good bedside manner with his patients and all this kind of stuff. Very like a real true professional. But when it comes down to nuance and when it comes down to using, well, it's not common sense, it's a rarity, it seems these days, but along the lines of nutrition and root cause and this kind of stuff, he's just not there at all. He thinks I'm mad and I'm crazy. So it wasn't until after the surgery, I'm having my family bring me all like steak and eggs, and I craved chicken. I hadn't eaten chicken on this carnivore diet maybe more than twice. And for some reason I started on like bone broth, then chicken, then eggs, and then I went to steak. And everybody looks at me like I was kind of weird and crazy. They kept coming around, no teas, no coffees. No, I'm okay. Nothing on the menu. No, I'm okay. Tinned fish and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, I just got strange looks. And I tried to tell a lot of people, actually, this stuff is fluid. It breaks down. Look at it. It's fluid. It doesn't get stuck. I'm not worried about an obstruction, because in these situations, obstructions, your chances of getting an obstruction increases dramatically, especially towards the edge.
Were you a big red meat eater for years, and this probably caused the damage, and you're just not telling us?
Yeah, destroyed my colon, man. No.
And so when did the brain begin to, as you were looking at what's coming out, because I'm assuming before you had your surgery, this carnivore stuff wasn't even on your radar. No. And then when did the carnivore stuff first come to being here, and you begin to really look at it and say, no, wait a minute, we're either lied to or we're just dumb as doctors?
So what happened, I remember it kind of like this. I would go around my parents every Sunday. We'll go back around there to have a Sunday roast. And every week I would have so much trouble digesting this food. And now I've got this stoma, the fiber would really struggle to kick around into the bag. Mm-hmm. Slowly but surely, I was kind of like backing off the veg and even feeling guilty about it. That's how inert I was, how brainwashed I really was, even at that point. And this was, let me think, for a couple of years afterwards, I was still going through this process. And so I was kind of like, right, no broccoli today. That's a bit of a nightmare. No peas. And it got to the point where I was having chicken, potatoes, Yorkshire puddings, which I don't know, it's a bit of a funny thing to explain what they are. But you pour gravy on, they're quite soft. It's kind of like you make it out of
it's like a biscuit, almost like
a little bit. It's like a soft, It's like a batter that you fashion into this little, you got meat toad in a hole out of it and all this kind of stuff.
Used to be one of my favorites. That's why I know it.
Right. Yeah, they're delicious. Yeah. But that stuff was kind of okay because it would break down. It's got no fiber, right? No skins, no seeds, no fiber, no gluten, no lectins, all this kind of stuff. It's that stuff that you make in the potato starch. It was okay, more pliable. But again, after a while, I found the potato starch, and if I ever had French fries, that actually causes a bit of a blockage. It really starts to toughen and stodge up to the point where it's really quite unpleasant. My abdominal wall would contract and flex as the food was coming. And that after a while, I'm hating my food. I don't want to eat anything because I enjoy it for a little bit, and then I've got to pay for hours afterwards. Slowly but surely, I was kind of like, do you know what? I just want the chicken and the gravy. But I wasn't carnivore. I was still eating a load of crap too. I was eating like every now and again, I'll have like some ice cream or chocolate, because that stuff is not good for you, like proper ice cream made with seed oils and loads of sugar and stuff. It was soft and pliable. Bananas were okay. White rice pasta.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I wasn't in nutritional ketosis. I still hadn't heard of this carnivore diet. But I had already instinctively got rid of a lot of these whole plant foods because they were causing me the problems. And I felt guilty about it because I still believed that I was supposed to eat that to be healthy. And that's where the nutrients were. I still believe that. Anyway, eventually I stumbled across Jordan Peterson on the TV, Jordan Peterson talking about his carnivore diet, the lion diet that he was on. And I remember just thinking, what a poor guy, he can only eat meat. And I wasn't like, oh, he's crazy, he's wrong. No, that's bad. I understood that it paid him to only eat that. And if he ate anything else, he pays for that in a bad way. And so again, some months go by, it may even be a year or so goes by. And then I'm seeing Mikhalia Peterson talk about the carnivore diet. And that's when it rang true with me. I hadn't really paid much attention, but this was obviously as I came out of hospital, I felt depressed. I went in and out of depression because I hated this thing. I felt like it was another part of me that wasn't me. Like I could blame it, like it wasn't me. I hated it. You have ruined my life.
Right.
I hate you. You're doing this to me. It was weird. And I got quite angry, depressed. I was very neurotic, but I became really bitter. And it was just a horrible situation to be in. But I remember coming home from work sometimes and I would freeze at the porch. I didn't even know what I was going to do, especially if no one was in the house. And I don't think I should really mention some of the really severe stuff, but all I will say is that
it's important. It's important. These are
okay?
human. To me,
I've
I
not
think
mentioned
this
this anywhere, and I don't know what I can say I'm not going to say any kind of vulgar language or anything like that.
No. These are human experiences. Critical.
So with the bags, you have to cut the holes in the bags, right? I remember a couple of times. It's almost like I wasn't in control, and I was this close to jamming the scissors in my neck. That's where I was. I've not shared that with anybody online.
Wow.
So that's where I was, and it was really quite crazy because when it got really real, I kind of like dropped the scissors, like what nearly had just happened. I really wasn't almost in control of myself to stop myself, and I just came out of it like, oh wow, that was way too real. And so that's when I knew I need help. I can't do this on my own anymore because wherever I go, the bag goes with me. And I'm not happy with this. Life was unacceptable to me. To move forward, to kind of like create my next move or my next day, I couldn't build that. It was unacceptable. The future, So I go back down to the GP, not wanting to take medications this time, but we had a long talk, and then he passed me on to this secondary unit called We're With You, and we had a long talk as well. And it was during this time when I was waiting for a secondary call in terms of how they were going to treat me, therapy, probably drugs, and both. That's when I was on the couch. 2 months afterwards, they had not got back to me. That's when I saw the Mikhalia Peterson video, Don't Eat This, on the Low Carb Down Under channel. And that may have saved my life. That's how I feel it. Because I don't know what I was going to do or what was going to become of me because they didn't get back to me. But there I was on the couch just looking at Mikhalia Peterson, and she was talking about autoimmunity and severe depression, and that was all I needed to hear. I was like, that's me. I struggled like that. But there you are, glowing with health, confident. She looked really good. Like, she looked so healthy. And when I'd seen certain pictures and images and her skin and her rheumatoid arthritis, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, I can't believe that all of this stuff is kind of miraculously lifted. And the depression, that was the thing that was really bothering me. And so I was sold on the spot. I was in so much pain. The idea of just cutting out all of these other foods, it was no biggie to me. It was like, whatever, I'll do anything. And so that's when I stumbled across more videos, BBBE. I started to see like Kendi Berry, and then people like yourself pop up on my screen on TV, because I was watching YouTube on TV, just trying to get to grips with, okay, how am I going to go about this? And beef, butter, bacon, and eggs sounded like enough variety where I could see my breakfast and my lunch, to how to fashion these together and think that it wasn't just the beef and the salt. That sounded like a bit extreme. And so that's kind of what I did. I just jumped in. overnight because I was desperate. I'd never recommend that for people. But I think I got away with it because I didn't have so much of a biome to upset not having a colon. I did have a slow turnaround with like 2 weeks of lack of energy, feeling a bit tired a bit earlier in the day, going upstairs, like waiting for something to happen. And also kind of still naturally being a pessimist and thinking this isn't probably going to work for me. But day 21 comes, and I speak about this a lot. Day 21, that's when the magic happened. I mean, I'd already got rid of my acid reflux, acne in my back went, energy started to come up after 2 weeks. I started to realize I wasn't sweating when I was working, and I was not burning at all, like cool as a cucumber. I'd take my hat off and I was just like Roger Federer on the court, no sweat, nothing, like easy peasy. And then day 21, I realized I was smiling. I had a new lens on my eyes. Everything looked more vibrant and beautiful. Nature, the birds, the wind blowing the trees. And I just remember feeling like, what's happening to me? This is amazing. And I pulled over and recorded my testimony and posted it to Facebook. And that's basically where it all started. And this was a 30-day challenge. And it's been 2.5 years, and I'm never going to stop.
Dr. Rob Kiltz, another beautiful, spectacular day. And I just want to send thanks to all those for watching the newest episode of Carnivore Conversations. Be sure to follow us on Spotify, Apple Music, and other streaming platforms to gain access to the full 1-hour episode. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more to come. God bless.